What I'm about to share is going to sound absolutely impossible, but I need you to hear me out. Last night, I had the most emotionally devastating encounter with Jesus about a question that haunts millions of hearts around the world. Why do some people never find romantic love, despite their deepest longing and most sincere efforts? What he revealed to me about divine purposes behind unfulfilled love, the hidden reasons some souls walk through life without partnership, and the profound spiritual assignments that only the unloved can fulfill, didn't just break my heart. It completely transformed my understanding of how God sees singleness and why some of his most precious children never experience earthly romance. But here's what will shatter you about what Jesus showed me. The reason some people never find love isn't what anyone expects, and the divine purposes behind romantic loneliness involve spiritual assignments so sacred and significant that only hearts broken by unfulfilled longing are qualified to carry them. But before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps give me the strength to speak my truth. Now let's get into my story. I'm sitting here on a weathered stone bench in the botanical gardens where I come when I need to think deeply about life's most painful questions. The early morning dew still clings to the roses around me, and there's something about being surrounded by flowers that bloom and fade in their seasons that feels fitting for sharing truths about love, longing, and the mysterious ways God works through our deepest unfulfilled desires. To understand why this revelation about never finding love devastated me so profoundly, I need to share something deeply personal that happened just 10 days ago. I was having dinner with my longtime friend Michael, a man who at 52 has never been married, despite being one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever known. As we sat across from each other in a restaurant filled with couples celebrating anniversaries and romantic milestones, Michael looked at me with eyes that held decades of accumulated disappointment and said something that pierced my soul. "Jonathan, I've done everything right. I've worked on myself, I've been patient, I've put myself out there, I've prayed, I've believed, I've hoped. But I'm starting to think that some people are just meant to be alone, and maybe I'm one of them." His voice cracked as he continued. "Everyone tells me God has someone special for me, that I just need to wait on his timing. But what if they're wrong? What if some people never get to experience being loved by someone who chooses them every day? What if I'm meant to watch everyone else find their person while I spend my entire life wondering what's wrong with me that makes me unlovable?" I had no answer that didn't sound like empty religious platitudes. Here was a man who had loved deeply, lost painfully, hoped repeatedly, and been disappointed consistently. He wasn't bitter or entitled. He was heartbroken by the apparent randomness of who finds love and who doesn't. During filming season 6 of The Chosen, I've been portraying Jesus, interacting with people who felt outcast, unloved, forgotten by society. But Michael's words made me realize I'd never deeply considered what Jesus thinks about those who feel romantically forgotten, the ones who watch from the sidelines as others pair off, marry, build families, while they remain perpetually single not by choice but by circumstance. The question became urgent when I received a letter from a viewer that absolutely destroyed me. A 47-year-old woman wrote, "Jonathan, I've been watching The Chosen and seeing Jesus' love for the outcasts gives me hope. But I need to ask you something that keeps me awake at night. I've been single my entire adult life. I've tried dating apps, singles groups, blind dates, prayer, fasting, believing God for a husband. I've worked on myself, gone to therapy, maintained friendships, built a career, served others. But I'm running out of time to have the family I've always dreamed of, and I can't understand why God would create me with such deep longing for love and marriage if he never intended to fulfill it. Am I being punished for something? Did I miss my person? Or are some of us just meant to be alone?" Her letter haunted me because it represented millions of people, good, loving, deserving individuals who have never experienced the romantic love that others seem to find effortlessly. The unfairness of it consumed my thoughts for weeks. 3 nights ago, while walking through these same gardens after a particularly challenging day of filming, I found myself face to face with my own deepest fears about love and loneliness. At 49 and unmarried, I've experienced my share of relationships that seemed promising but ultimately didn't work out. But sitting on this bench, surrounded by couples enjoying evening strolls, I was confronted with the terrifying possibility that maybe love just isn't in the cards for everyone. The catalyst for last night's encounter came when I ran into my neighbor, Eleanor, a 78-year-old woman who has lived alone her entire adult life. She was here in the gardens, feeding ducks at the pond, and when I joined her, she shared something that shattered my heart. "You know, Jonathan," she said, scattering breadcrumbs while watching the ducks with gentle eyes, "people always ask me if I'm lonely, if I regret never marrying. They can't imagine how someone could live a full life without romantic love, But what they don't understand is that I stopped waiting for love to make my life meaningful decades ago. I've had to find other ways to matter, other purposes to pursue, other forms of love to give and receive. She paused, her voice growing softer. But I'd be lying if I said there aren't moments, usually late at night or during holidays when everyone's with family, when I wonder what it would have been like to be someone's first choice, to wake up every day knowing I was loved, not because I'm useful or kind, but simply because I'm me. Her words broke something open in my chest because they revealed the quiet ache that millions of people carry, not dramatic despair, but a persistent sadness about missing out on one of life's most celebrated experiences. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Michael's resignation, about the viewers' desperate questions, about Eleanor's dignified acceptance of lifelong singleness. I found myself wrestling with questions that challenged everything I thought I knew about God's goodness and His plans for our lives. At 2 a.m., I came back to this bench and prayed with more desperation than I'd ever felt about this topic. Jesus, I need to understand why some people never find romantic love. I need to know if you have purposes for singleness that go beyond just waiting for the right person. Please show me your heart for those who long for love but never find it, because I need to know if their lives have meaning beyond their unfulfilled desires. I prayed until dawn broke over the gardens, pouring out questions about divine will, human longing, the fairness of love's distribution, and whether God sees the tears of those who fall asleep alone night after night. As the first rays of sunlight began illuminating the flowers around me, I felt this overwhelming sense that I was about to receive revelation about one of life's most painful mysteries. The gardens grew incredibly still despite the awakening sounds of morning birds and distant city life. Even the gentle breeze seemed to pause until there was only silence, and this overwhelming awareness of divine presence settling over the entire space like morning mist made of sacred understanding. Then, in what felt like both an instant and eternity, I found myself transported into the most emotionally intense spiritual encounter I'd ever experienced. I was still in the gardens, but they had become a place where I could perceive the deepest truths about love, longing, and God's purposes for human hearts that never find their earthly match. Jesus appeared beside me on the bench, but his expression was unlike anything I'd experienced before. His face showed such profound sorrow mixed with infinite love that I immediately understood he was about to reveal something that would break my heart while simultaneously healing it. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice carried both the weight of understanding all human longing and the gentle authority of divine wisdom. "You've been asking about those who never find romantic love because you sense that their stories matter deeply to me, and you're right. What I'm about to show you will challenge everything the world believes about love, worth, and the purposes I accomplish through unfulfilled desires." As he spoke, I could feel my heart expanding to hold truths about singleness and divine love that I'd never imagined. I was about to witness something that would forever change how I understood God's heart for those who walk through life romantically alone. "The reason this question torments so many hearts," Jesus continued, "is because people have been taught that romantic love is the primary way I show my care for my children, and that those who don't find it must be missing something essential. But what I'm about to reveal will show you that some of my most beloved children are called to a different kind of love story, one that serves eternal purposes no married person could fulfill." But then he said something that made my heart race with both hope and heartbreak. "The people who never find romantic love aren't forgotten by me or punished by me. They're chosen by me for assignments so sacred, so significant, that they require hearts that belong completely to me, hearts that would be divided if they found earthly romance." I could sense that I was about to witness something that would reveal both the profound pain and the hidden purpose behind romantic loneliness, showing me why some souls are called to love stories that exist entirely in the spiritual realm. "Are you ready to see why some of my most precious children never find earthly love?" Jesus asked, his eyes holding mine with infinite tenderness mixed with holy determination. "Because what you're about to witness will show you that their unfulfilled longing isn't evidence of my neglect, but proof of their calling to experience dimensions of divine love that partnered hearts often never discover." As Jesus and I sat on that spiritually transformed bench in the botanical gardens, the atmosphere around us began to shift in ways that allowed me to perceive the hidden spiritual purposes behind unfulfilled romantic longing. I found myself witnessing not just individual stories of singleness, but the vast divine orchestration of how God uses romantically unfulfilled hearts to accomplish purposes that partnered souls often cannot. "Jonathan," Jesus said, his voice carrying both infinite compassion and divine authority, "what I'm about to show you will reveal why some souls are called to love stories that exist entirely in the spiritual realm. You'll witness Michael's actual spiritual assignment and understand why his romantic loneliness serves purposes more profound than earthly partnership ever could. Suddenly, I could perceive spiritual realities surrounding people who had never found romantic love, their sing, not just their emotional experiences, but the divine purposes their singleness was designed to serve. The first sacred assignment that requires romantically unfulfilled hearts, Jesus began, is undivided intercession for those who are too distracted by earthly loves to pray effectively. Watch what Michael accomplishes in the spiritual realm through his loneliness. I witnessed Michael during his late-night hours when loneliness felt most acute, and I saw that his prayers during those seasons of ache were reaching hearts and changing circumstances in ways that amazed even the angels. His undivided attention to God, born from having no human partner to share his deepest thoughts with, had created an intimacy with the divine that partnered people rarely achieve. When someone has no earthly love to comfort them, they learn to find comfort in me, in ways that create extraordinary spiritual power, Jesus explained. Michael's prayers for others are answered more readily because his heart isn't divided between human and divine love. It's focused entirely on me. I watched as Michael's intercession for struggling marriages around him actually saved relationships. His prayers for lonely elderly neighbors brought them unexpected companionship. His spiritual covering over children in his neighborhood protected them from dangers their parents never knew existed. The second sacred assignment, Jesus continued, is becoming spiritual parents to souls who have been abandoned by their biological families. Some people never find romantic love because I need their full capacity for nurture and care to be available for the spiritually orphaned. I saw Eleanor, the 78-year-old woman from the gardens, and realized that her entire life of singleness had positioned her to become a spiritual mother to dozens of people who had no one else to love them consistently. Her apartment was filled with photos of adopted family members, former students, neighbors' children, refugees she'd mentored, all people who called her when they needed encouragement or advice. Eleanor's unfulfilled desire for her own biological family created a vacuum that I filled with spiritual children, who needed exactly the kind of focused, undivided love she could provide, Jesus said with profound satisfaction. A married woman with her own family responsibilities could never have offered what Eleanor has given to so many souls. The third assignment was perhaps the most heartbreaking and beautiful. Some people never find romantic love because their hearts are needed as safe harbors for others whose earthly loves have failed them. They become sanctuaries of unconditional acceptance for the romantically wounded. I watched as people who had been betrayed, abandoned, or abused in romantic relationships naturally gravitated toward friends who had never married, not because these single people were less threatening, but because their unfulfilled longing had cultivated a quality of love that demanded nothing and offered everything. Those who have been disappointed in love learn to love without expectation, Jesus explained. They offer the kind of safe, healing relationships that help wounded hearts trust again. Their romantic disappointment becomes others' romantic healing. But then Jesus revealed something that completely shattered my understanding of why some people never find love. The fourth assignment is the most sacred of all. Some souls are called to be earthly representations of my own heart for humanity. I have never been romantically loved by my creation, yet I pour out perfect love constantly. These souls mirror my experience and demonstrate that love can be given freely without being received romantically. I began to see single people throughout history who had loved others lavishly, without romantic reciprocation, and I realized they were living demonstrations of divine love, the giving without receiving, serving without reward, loving without guarantee of being loved back. Every person who loves others deeply while remaining romantically unloved is showing the world what my love looks like, Jesus said, his voice thick with emotion. They prove that love doesn't require romantic fulfillment to be meaningful, powerful, and transformative. The fifth assignment revealed why this calling is so spiritually significant. People who never find romantic love often develop the purest form of love that exists on earth. Love that seeks nothing for itself. Love that serves for the joy of serving. Love that gives for the pleasure of giving rather than the hope of receiving. I watch single individuals serving in ministries, caring for aging parents, volunteering with abandoned children, supporting friends through crises, all with a quality of selflessness that amazed me. Their love had been purified by disappointment into something that resembled divine love more closely than most married love ever does. When romantic fulfillment is removed from the equation, Jesus explained, some hearts learn to love the way I love, unconditionally, sacrificially, without hope of earthly reward. This is the highest form of love possible on earth. But the sixth assignment was what broke my heart completely. Some people never find romantic love because their longing keeps them connected to me in ways that satisfaction might diminish. Their unfulfilled desire drives them to seek in me what they cannot find in human relationships. I saw people whose romantic disappointment had created such intimacy with God that their relationship with Him was more fulfilling than most marriages. Their longing had become a doorway to divine love so profound that earthly romance would have seemed like a consolation prize. These souls discover that being loved by me is more satisfying than being loved by any human could be, Jesus said with radiant joy. Their romantic loneliness leads them to the ultimate love story, the one between creator and created soul. The seventh assignment was perhaps the most mysterious. Some people are called to carry the grief of unfulfilled longing as an intercessory burden for all those who struggle with unmet desires. Their romantic disappointment becomes a form of spiritual service that helps others process their own unfulfilled dreams. I watched as people who had never found love became counselors, writers, teachers, and friends who could help others navigate disappointment, find meaning beyond their circumstances, and trust God through unmet expectations. Their personal experience of unfulfilled longing equips them to minister to others facing similar struggles, Jesus explained. They become wounded healers whose own romantic disappointment becomes healing medicine for others' hearts. As these revelations settled into my consciousness, I felt both overwhelmed by the beauty of these assignments and heartbroken by their cost. But Jesus, I said, struggling with the implications, this makes it sound like some people are sacrificed for the benefit of others. How is that fair? How do I tell someone that their romantic loneliness serves divine purposes when what they want is just to be loved by someone who chooses them? His expression became infinitely tender. You tell them the truth, that their longing isn't evidence of my neglect, but proof of their sacred calling, that their romantic disappointment is creating spiritual fruit that will feed others for generations, that they are not forgotten or overlooked but chosen for assignments that require the kind of love that only unfulfilled hearts can give. I could sense that there was still more Jesus wanted to show me about the ultimate purpose behind never finding romantic love, something that would reveal the eternal significance of this calling that goes beyond even these profound, earthly assignments. As Jesus and I continued on that spiritually transformed bench in the botanical gardens, I could sense that he was preparing to reveal the most profound truth about romantic singleness, Bon 9, something that would show the ultimate eternal significance of this calling that goes beyond even the sacred earthly assignments I'd already witnessed. Jonathan, Jesus said, his voice taking on a tone of both divine revelation and infinite love, what I'm about to show you will reveal why some souls are chosen for love stories that exist entirely in the spiritual realm, and why their earthly romantic disappointment serves the highest possible purpose in my eternal kingdom. The atmosphere around us shifted to reveal not just individual experiences of singleness, but the vast, eternal perspective where I could see how unfulfilled romantic longing serves purposes that extend far beyond earthly life into the very heart of God's relationship with humanity. The ultimate truth about those who never find romantic love, Jesus began, is that they are called to be prophetic representatives of humanity's relationship with me. Just as I long for my bride, the church, with perfect love that is often unrequited, they experience unrequited longing that mirrors my own heart for humanity. The revelation hit me like lightning. I began to see that people who loved deeply but remained unloved romantically were living parables of God's own experience. He's pouring out perfect love on a humanity that often doesn't love him back with the same intensity. Every person who has ever loved someone who couldn't or wouldn't love them back is experiencing a shadow of what I feel every day. Jesus continued, his voice heavy with emotion. They understand my heart in ways that those who have been consistently loved cannot comprehend. I watched as the spiritual significance of unrequited love became clear. It wasn't just personal disappointment, but participation in the divine experience of loving without guarantee of return. The second eternal truth, Jesus revealed, is that those who never find earthly romance are being prepared for the ultimate romance, the marriage between the Lamb and his bride that will be celebrated in eternity. Their unfulfilled longing on earth is creating capacity for fulfillment that will exceed anything earthly marriage could provide. I saw people whose romantic disappointment had created such longing for perfect love that when they experienced the ultimate union with Christ in eternity, their joy would be exponentially greater than those who had been satisfied with earthly love. Their earthly romantic hunger isn't punishment, it's preparation for satisfaction so complete that it will justify every moment of earthly longing. Jesus said with radiant anticipation, they will appreciate the eternal marriage feast in ways that those who were satisfied with earthly appetizers never could. The third eternal purpose broke my heart with its beauty. Some souls are chosen to demonstrate that love's highest expression isn't in receiving romantic fulfillment, but in giving love freely regardless of whether it's returned. They prove that love is most divine when it's most selfless. I witnessed throughout history individuals who had loved others completely without romantic reciprocation, and I realized they had achieved the purest form of love possible, Saj, love that gives for the joy of giving rather than the hope of receiving. These souls become living demonstrations of how I love, Jesus explained. When they love others without hope of romantic return, they show the world what divine love looks like. Unconditional, sacrificial, focused on the beloved's good rather than the lover's gratification. But the fourth eternal truth was what completely transformed my understanding. Those who never find romantic love often develop such intimacy with me that they become my closest friends on earth. Their undivided hearts create space for relationship with me that partnered hearts, no matter how faithful, rarely achieve. I saw individuals whose romantic loneliness had driven them into such deep communion with God that their prayers moved heaven, their faith moved mountains, their love transformed everyone they touched. They had become friends of God in ways that those with earthly companions seldom experienced. When human love doesn't fill the heart, divine love can fill it completely, Jesus said with profound joy. These souls discover that being loved by the Creator of the universe is more fulfilling than being loved by any created being could ever be. The fifth eternal purpose revealed why this calling is so precious to God. People who never find romantic love become bridges between the married and the single, helping both groups understand that worth doesn't come from relationship status but from identity as my beloved children. I watched as single individuals ministered to married couples struggling in their relationships, offering perspective that came from finding fulfillment in God alone. Their presence reminded others that happiness comes from divine love, not human love. They teach the married that earthly love is a gift, not a right, and they teach other singles that singleness is a calling, not a curse, Jesus explained. They become peacemakers who help both groups find their true identity in me, rather than in their relationship status. But then Jesus revealed something that made me weep. The sixth eternal truth is that some souls volunteer for this assignment before they're even born. In my presence, seeing the spiritual fruit that unfulfilled romantic longing produces, they choose earthly loneliness for eternal purpose. I witnessed souls in pre-earthly existence understanding the assignments that would require romantically unfulfilled hearts, and volunteering for the more difficult path because they could see its eternal significance. These are among the most courageous souls in my kingdom, Jesus said with deep reverence. They choose earthly romantic disappointment because they understand that some spiritual assignments require hearts that belong completely to me. The seventh and final eternal truth brought everything together. Those who never find romantic love become the most powerful witnesses to the truth that human hearts are made for divine love first and foremost. Their lives prove that earthly love, beautiful as it is, cannot ultimately satisfy the deepest longings of the human soul. I realized that people who found fulfillment despite never finding romantic love were living proof that God alone can satisfy the human heart. Their joy in singleness demonstrated that divine love is sufficient for complete happiness. They become prophets who proclaim through their very existence that I am enough, Jesus said with overwhelming emotion. Their contentment in me alone shows the world what every soul is ultimately seeking, perfect love from the perfect lover. As these eternal truths settled into my understanding, I felt both heartbroken and amazed by the profound significance of romantic singleness. But how do I share this with people who are in the depths of romantic disappointment? I asked. How do I comfort someone who just wants to be chosen by another human being? Jesus' expression filled with infinite compassion. You tell them that they are chosen, chosen by me for assignments so sacred that they require undivided hearts. You help them see that their romantic longing isn't evidence of their unworthiness, but proof of their calling to experience the ultimate love story. And you remind them, he continued, that their earthly romantic disappointment is temporary, but the spiritual fruit it produces is eternal. Every tear they cry over unfulfilled love becomes a seed for future harvest in my kingdom. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the physical bench in the gardens, but everything had changed. The couples walking past no longer looked like evidence of what I might be missing. They looked like different expressions of love's many forms, no more or less valuable than the love I was called to live. Over the past 24 hours since this encounter, I've been sharing these revelations with people who desperately needed this perspective. The impact has been transformative. I called Michael and shared what Jesus had shown me about his sacred assignments. When I described how his romantic disappointment was creating spiritual power and positioning him for ultimate fulfillment, he began to cry. You mean my singleness actually serves a purpose? You mean I'm not just defective or unlucky? When I assured him that he was chosen for assignments that require an undivided heart, his entire perspective shifted from resignation to purpose. I also reached out to the woman who had written about her lifelong singleness. When I shared Jesus' revelations about eternal purposes and ultimate romance, she experienced healing that years of trying to find earthly love hadn't provided. I never thought about my longing as preparation for something greater, she said with wonder. I've been seeing my singleness as failure when it might actually be calling. Let me pray for everyone who has never found romantic love but needs this perspective. Father, thank you for revealing the eternal significance of romantic singleness and the sacred assignments you give to undivided hearts. For every person listening who has longed for romantic love but never found it, help them see their disappointment through eternal eyes. Show them that they are not forgotten, overlooked, or defective, but chosen for purposes that require hearts that belong completely to you. Help them understand that their romantic longing isn't evidence of your neglect, but preparation for ultimate fulfillment that exceeds anything earthly love could provide. Transform their disappointment into purpose, their longing into intimacy with you, their unfulfilled dreams into spiritual assignments that serve your kingdom in ways that partnered hearts often cannot. For those serving as spiritual parents to the orphaned, intercessors for the distracted, safe harbors for the wounded, and bridges between different communities, help them recognize the eternal value of their sacrifice and service. Let them discover that being loved by you is more fulfilling than being loved by any human could be. Help them find such satisfaction in divine love that earthly romantic love becomes secondary to the ultimate love story they're already living. Use their testimonies to encourage others who struggle with romantic disappointment, showing that worth comes from your love alone, not from human validation or partnership status. In Jesus' name, amen. If this revelation about the purpose behind never finding love has brought new perspective to your heart, please subscribe and share your story in the comments. Are you single and recognizing divine assignments in your singleness? How has this truth changed your understanding of romantic disappointment? Remember, if you have never found romantic love despite deep longing, you are not defective or forgotten. You are chosen for sacred assignments that require an undivided heart. Your romantic disappointment isn't evidence of divine neglect. It's proof of your calling to love like God loves, serve like God serves, and demonstrate that human hearts are ultimately made for divine love above all else. Your love story isn't missing that, it's just being written in the spiritual realm where the ultimate romance between creator and created soul unfolds with beauty that exceeds any earthly partnership.